What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Bob's Garage, and this video is our first video in the series of how to replace your heater core on your B5 S4. So stay tuned for more. It's about to get interesting. Alright, so here we are. We got our car in our garage, and first things first is you're going to be working on both the driver's and passenger sides. You're going to need ample amount of room around your car. So if you can, make sure that you have enough room on both sides of your car to open the doors, leave them wide open, all that good stuff. Next up, I would suggest rolling your windows down. I have tinted windows, so we're going to be disconnecting the battery. So by having your windows down, it'll allow more light to spill into your cabin area. And next up, you want to move your power seats all the way back. And down. Okay, that's the passenger side. And driver's side. We got some stuff blocking the back seat here, but you get the idea. Next up, remove your cowl. Set it off to the side. Using a 10mm wrench, disconnect your battery. And then the next step would be to remove your hoses that run to the heater core. So this is right next to your battery. These two pipes coming out of your firewall, those are actually part of your heater core. So there's two black hoses here. You would be removing these spring clamps here and pulling these hoses off. If you watch my previous episode, this is a bypass. So I had bypassed the heater core. So right now, these are not connected to the actual heater core itself. But it's worth noting, let your car cool off and your coolant chill down before you pop anything loose and start draining your fluid everywhere. You do not want to get burned. So just for reference, this is on the other side of the battery. This is the battery cable, but these are your air conditioning lines. So we're going to be gaining access to behind here and everything. So next up, remove your passenger side cover, and this gains you access to your cabin filter area as well as the bolt for our AC lines here. Next up, using an 8mm Allen, we're going to remove this bolt here. This is holding our AC refrigerant lines together. There's basically a coupler here. If you haven't watched my previous video, before you release this, make sure, or remove this, make sure you drain or evacuate your AC system. Take it to a shop and have it done properly. Your system may hiss a little bit even after being evacuated. That's mainly because the shop probably left a little bit of a vacuum on your system. And you can smell the refrigerant that's left in there coming out. Next up, empty out your glove box. And your center console area here. Okay, from there, pop off your fuse cover. Set that aside. and remove remove the 8mm bolt that's on this side here. We're going to remove these ones here. Or I should say down here. We're going to remove this panel here. And I have a janky ratchet, so. Okay, so that's one. These are 8mm bolts. And then from there, there is a hidden panel right about right behind this line here. We're going to need a screwdriver to get that out. There's the other 8mm. Remove that. Okay, so now the panel's already, you can see it basically popping free already. While we're here, so we just removed this little false panel. There's one more over here. We're going to pry that free with a screwdriver. Okay, you can see there's a screw hole there. So we're going to remove that screw, and there's one straight below it. So remove those two. Okay, next up is the glove box. So start by opening it up, push in on the sides here, and it should swing all the way down. You need a flashlight probably for over here. And there are 4 bolts holding in the glove box. Let's come in for a closer view. Okay, so the first 2 are accessible by removing this cover on the outside. There's a little bit of an access hole down here near the bottom to get a screwdriver in there. And here they are. So remove this one and this one. Now that you got those 2 bolts removed, you're going to move on to number 3, which is just below the left side plunger. You can see it right in there. There may be an access cap covering it up. I don't remember. I think I misplaced mine, but so remove that. This will be bolt number 3. Okay, we now have that 3rd bolt removed, and number 4 is kind of hard to see. It's actually up above this plunger, I believe, somewhere right up inside there. I can't show you this bolt because last time I did this job, I don't believe I replaced that bolt. So it's already missing or removed on my car, which probably explains why my glove box rattles a little bit. And you can already see that this panel is already popping loose and starting to come out. There is some connectors and stuff that we're going to have to deal with up above this panel. So for the light bulb that illuminates the glove box when you open it, stuff like that. So stay tuned. Okay, next up is the center console removal. And on the B5s, where you start is actually not in the front, but in the back. All the way on the back side of the center console here. And down here, first step is to remove your ashtray. This is our ashtray. Just go ahead and pull that out. It pops right out. And you can see there's 3 nuts. There's 2 actually holding the center console in, and 1 inside that circle, the darker colored one. That one has the is bolting down the handbrake. So we're going to remove 2 out of 3. So we're going to remove this one and the one closest right there. 13mm. All right, next up, back up front, underneath your armrest, lift it up, pull out your cup holder, and there is one more 13mm nut. Remove that. Next up, using a screwdriver, pop off these little covers. They're on both sides of your shifter on the center console trim. Pop it off and remove these 8mm bolts. There's one here and one on the exact opposite side, right around there. Moving on, go ahead and pull your e-brake all the way up, and underneath it there is a small locking tab right at the base. You're gonna lift up on it and pull this leather piece off. You may want to use a small screwdriver to do this. Here's a closer view of the locking mechanism on the bottom of the parking brake handle, and it's almost like a zip tie or something. So I mentioned to pry it up. Just now I was fighting it, it was locked on really good. I actually put a screwdriver in this loop and pried down, and it popped it loose, and then I was able to slide it off. One other note is be careful with this shifter, or I should say this parking brake handle. When I first did mine, there's a little bit of a ring, like a decorative ring that goes around the top. This is on the side of it where the silver button is to release the parking brake. This ring had fallen off, and I'm now missing it, but it wouldn't stay back on. I tried to put it back on and stuff, so just be careful that if it falls off, it's not really gonna do much. And let's move on. Okay, from there, lift up your e-brake as high as you can, and you'll notice there's like a channel in the center console for the e-brake to kind of go in, and we should be able to remove the rear portion of the center console. We're going to give it a try and see if it's free here. Okay, so what I basically did was I lifted the back up first, so that way it cleared those bolts, those bolt heads that are sticking up, the ones that had the nuts attached to it. And now we popped it free from up here, and I had just lifted this up. This car is a Tiptronic, by the way, and now we should be able to slide this whole piece off. Not quite. So underneath we have one wire loom here, one wire connector. Let's see if we can get it. Sometimes you need to use screwdrivers. Oh, there it goes. And we have one more down here. This one's interesting because it almost looks like a foam line. I think some cars, maybe European models, this is, I'm in the US, but they actually had a phone inside the center console. So there you go. There was one connector here and one connector here. I believe one was for the phone and one was for the e-brake. Yep, you can see the wire running to the e-brake. So now the rear section of our center console is out. Let's move on. Okay, so moving on, the next step is to remove your shifter knob. If you have a manual transmission, I believe it just threads on. This car is Tiptronic, so it's a little bit more involved. So it's a little harder than just telling someone, hey, remove your shifter handle. So with the Tiptronic, this button that you have to depress to shift gears, it's spring loaded. But what you're going to do is actually pull it out. See how it pulls out? And then you're going to lift the leather handle up and out. I'm going to have to try to remember the secret When I did this the first time, I actually pulled this button completely out. I thought I broke the shifter handle, but I was able to figure out how the mechanism, the spring-loaded mechanism, works exactly. But I believe on the Tiptronic cars, you have to move the shifter to either 3, 4, or drive, and then you can lift it off. So let me try it out here and see what the secret is. I don't remember. Okay, first step is put your keys in your ignition, and that unlocks your shifter. We're gonna try D. I don't remember which one it was. There's a chrome piece underneath the leather handle. Push that down. That kind of unlocks it. Pull out this silver button and should be able to lift up. That's not working. Let's try 4. Okay, so that was the secret. Put it into 3rd, and if you couldn't tell from the video, first step was I pushed this silver ring attaches to this detent. Push that down. Shift it into 3rd. Pull this button out just a little bit. We're not talking rip it out. Pull it out a little bit, and you kind of basically saw me with the button pulled out, jiggling it, and then it finally popped off. So for now, we're just going to lift this up, go back into park, take our keys out. There's your shifter handle. If this button comes all the way out, you're going to be in for some fun trying to repair that. Okay, next step, remember those keys that I told you you're really going to need? There's 4 of them. Next step is to remove our stereo. Okay, so the secret is finding the 4 key slots. This key set that I got, these are actually labeled. So this is, what does it say? Top left, top right. Okay. I think it goes above these buttons. And there's actually, you can see there's a slot for the bottom. Oh, here I locked in there and clicked. Click. Click. And I'm going just above the 4 or the top 2 buttons and just below the bottom 2 buttons. Now, the whole point of these rings being on here is so you can pull them out. I think you go, yeah, you pull them outwards and you pull them outward. And they say before you remove this to make sure that you have your unlock code. I never had to deal with my unlock code. I don't know why that is. Maybe that's a regional thing, or maybe I didn't have to deal with it because I have the battery disconnected and I never reconnected the battery before putting this back in. So you can use these to pull your radio out, and there it is. So disconnect everything. Try not to break anything. This one here, this block silver metal connector, you're actually going to squeeze the sides and pull the whole thing out. I originally had thought that you just remove this metal piece, and from there you're just going to basically pull everything apart. And there's not a lot of slack on these wires. This black connector is keyed on both sides, it looks like. There it goes. I just pinched both sides. And here's just a quick note. There looks like there's a fuse on the back of the stereo. Yeah, it says fuse 7.5 amps. So I've never had to deal with that blowing. But that's how you remove your stereo on a B5 Audi S4. Okay, moving on. Now that we have our stereo removed, I just want you to, on your particular vehicle, kind of either take a picture or make a mental note. I would say just take a picture of how your wire loom or wire trunks are routed. So things are going to get very confusing when you go to put this all back together and nothing fits. Mainly because these cars are built so tight with how everything's set up and all that. So for instance, here's all of the stereo wires here that I pulled out or disconnected. This main black trunk actually loops down and back around and connects to the HVAC controls. And you can see I have one big trunk above that metal bar. I don't remember if that's how it was stock or not. I could not get that trunk to fit below that metal bar. We're not to that point yet, but all that's coming out. So just start taking some pictures from here on out of how yours is set up, and it's going to get very confusing and all that very soon here. Once you start disconnecting everything, you're going to start freaking out. For instance, yeah, so the only thing sticking up are the radio cables. Which one is this one? The smaller black cable is coming from above, from up here, and everything else is coming from below. So all I can say is good luck. Now the directions here say to unbolt the center stack trim plate. My understanding, this is the center stack. Now this wood piece, I would consider that the trim plate, but I don't see any bolts like up underneath here anywhere. I can't remember what I did to get that off. So for now, what we're going to do is the next step, and it says unbolt the center stack trim from the carrier unit. So that would be here and here. And then it also says on the driver's side of the center stack, down by your knee, there's an access port, which was this little guy here, just to the bottom, just below and to the right of the steering wheel or steering column. So we already removed that cover, we already undid that bolt, and now we're gonna just remove this bolt. Well, kind of blocked. That bolt and that bolt. They're both 8mm. Alright, how we doing? Hanging in there? It's about to get crazy. Alright, so next up we're moving on to the dash. And the first step to work on the dash is remove the two 8mm bolts on either side of the dash. We already removed those two covers. So here we are on the side, driver's side, 8mm and 8mm. Remove those two. And now we are on the passenger side. And once again, we have two 8mm bolts. One here and one here. Remove those. Okay, here we are on the passenger side, and as you can see, I mean, this bottom pad is pretty much falling off. I'm gonna see if I can remove this, because now we need to move on to the passenger airbag area, which is up here, but we got to access it through this area. And yeah, so let's see. The only holdup that we have is it kind of seats inside of the center stack trim, as you can see there. Other than that, there's not much else holding it in. Just a couple wire connections, one over here I believe, one up here. So let me see if I can wiggle this thing out. I don't remember if there's... Oh, you know what? There is one more wire connection somewhere back in here because there's a light for the footwell. Okay, so this piece that kind of overlaps the center trim, or the center stack trim, it's rather flexible. So I think we're just going to go for it and try to pop this out here. And from here we can access the wire looms. Let me come in for a closer look. Okay, so once I kind of forced it, but it came out without any damage to this flexible piece or part. Now, when I pulled it, this is on the left side near the center trim. You can see there's a wire connector disconnected over here. It actually, where's it at? There it is. It actually pulled loose on its own. Now if we follow this back, there is the footwell light connector. So we're going to disconnect that, and I think that's it. Let me see if I can get back in here. Okay, let's see what they said. I think that's it. Yep. And we can just pull the whole assembly out, set it aside. Okay, now with that out of the way, we have full access to the entire passenger side here. And more specifically, the next steps are going to be to start pulling out the passenger airbag system. You can kind of see it up there. That's the yellow connectors. As far as I know, anything on this car that has a yellow connector, that color, or that looks just like that, that's an airbag. So you do have to be careful if you're working on other parts of the car, because it has the side curtain airbags and all that. So I know down here in the footwell, like over here-ish, there's a yellow connector, which I believe is for the side curtains that lead to like this, what is it called, the B pillar, A pillar, whatever. I think there's an airbag built into this pillar here. So let's move on to the passenger side airbag. Okay, just as a little bit of a frame of reference, we are on the passenger side here. You can see the Quattro badge here, and we're gonna specifically remove the bracketry for the passenger front airbag. Now, looking underneath here, this is on the left side. There's two nuts. I think it's actually nut and bolt combos on this left bracket, and then over here it matches on the right bracket. So those are two of the brackets, and the third bracket is this one basically in the middle, almost underneath the yellow airbag connector, and that holds it to the dash pad, I believe, or holds the dash pad in place from flexing. So we need to remove all those, and then once we remove those brackets and stuff, the airbag should drop down and stay attached to those side brackets. So let's give it a try here. Okay, here's a quick note on the airbag connector. So when it was up, or I should say plugged in, it was, let me get some light on this real quick here. This was plugged into here, like this. This piece is slid into the holder, so it was kind of like this, and that was plugged in. So first off, I pinched the sides of this guy here. I pinched it and pulled it out of this connector. Problem is, this connector is actually on the wire trunk, so that was still attached to the airbag. So you can see it's kind of keyed or channeled. I just put a little screwdriver in the center piece here, where it's kind of like it bends, but it's a lock. So I put a screwdriver in there and was able to slide it. Where's the camera? See the black? Where's it at? There it is. That black channel, that's what's holding it. So I just put a screwdriver in there and pushed it back, like towards the firewall, and it slid off of there. So now this airbag is disconnected. Oh, by the way, you did remember to unplug your battery, right? Okay, it's so tight down here, I'm not really going to be able to get into here, but so the first time I took this airbag out, I'm going to try it a little different this time. We'll see if it works. The first time I did it, I removed like every single freaking bolt. So you can see I removed those two nuts there, I removed those bolts there, I removed this bracket here, I removed every freaking bracket. So those are those bolts that I just showed you that I removed the nuts. If we follow that bracket up, you can see all the way up, I can't get anything to point there, all the way up there, there's two bolts. That's the same bracket. So I'm going to try to release those two bolts there and these two bolts here, and I think that'll completely free up the airbag. And then the only thing holding it is this like bracket here. But so that should, I'm hoping or thinking, mean that there's only like 4 main bolts holding the airbag in, and then I just have to remove this bracket. So I'm gonna try that. Otherwise, I mean, if you want to go crazy and go nuts, you can remove those two nuts, you can remove those two bolts, you can remove those two nuts, you can remove those two bolts, those bolts up there, those bolts up there, those two, and this one, and everything's gonna come out. But just take a couple pictures so you can remember how all these brackets fit together and stuff for later on. But yeah, let's give that a try. And there you have it. It's just not fun and easy to do, to remove the passenger airbag, because it's, if you're a big guy, you're upside down, you're fucking with the bolts, your brackets. I had one of the brackets fall and hit me in the head and piss me off. But here we are in the passenger side now. I did leave this bracket piece, whatever, still dangling in here. I'll figure out if I need to remove that later or not. I don't remember exactly what this does, but yeah. So from there, we are just touching the tip of the iceberg of digging into the dash, into removing the dash. So the this whole cavity now up behind here is all void, and from here I think we're gonna call it quits for today. It's been a long day. I did work all day, and then I'm playing with this. So what we're looking at probably about 2 hours worth of work to get to this point. We have the passenger airbag removed, the radio removed, the rear portion of the center console, the shifter handle, and I could probably, I think the driver's dash, I'm sorry, the lower dash pad, I think that's loose enough to the point where I could actually pull that free. So from here, I think this is a good point to call it quits. It's hot out here. Yeah, so the next step was to just remove a couple more bolts on the center stack, and then to remove the steering wheel and all that. So I'm gonna call it quits tonight right here at this point. Tomorrow I'm gonna be back at it again, and we'll see. Tomorrow I don't know if I'll be able to get the rest of it taken apart, but well, we'll see. I'm only on page 6 out of 14 for the directions here, so stay tuned for more. This is it for video 1 in my how to replace your heater core series, and I'll see you next time. Stay tuned for more.